Hi, Roy here on my channel, Roy Reads Anything, which now has an animated title sequence. So the channel is called Roy Reads Anything. Yes, and I've told your fortune as well. So it's a channel. It's a channel about books that are strange, weird, or just interesting. Usually I say they're strange, interesting, or just weird. So everything's changing this time. They're going to talk about three things. One of my yard of random books, a book club read of the early days of the 20th century, and some mushroom jungle science fiction pulp. So yard of random books is where I started doing all of this, where I bought a 36-inch shelf full of books that were sold for decorative purposes, old hardbacks, kind of the forgotten literature of the world, only good for the colour of its spines, and and I thought I'll actually read them, see what's actually in them, and I'm steadily working my way through them. One of them is David Niven, Bring on the Empty Horses book club edition. So David Niven, Hollywood actor, started British guy who went to Hollywood, kind of worked his way up from an extra to leading man, and he wrote a couple of books in the 70s. One of them, The Moon's a Balloon. The Moon's a Balloon, I remember being this massive bestseller that it seemed like everybody had. You'd see it everywhere. There was one in our house. We as kids would dip into it because there were rude bits. So Moon's a Balloon was his autobiography, and I imagine super entertaining, judging by the fact that lots of people read it. Sequel, Bring on the Empty Horses. Again, massive bestseller. Why there's so many copies. I've seen them in charity shops. It's kind of why this is a sort of worthless stack of paper as far as the world is concerned. But it's great. It's not. It's autobiographical in a sense, but it's not so much about him as about all the people he knew. So David Niven seems to have been this kind of amiable character who would easily befriend people and would become a sort of confidant of all sorts of stars, most of which you've heard of. People like Humphrey Bogart are literally named, but there's a couple of sequences where he's hidden the name under a sort of pseudonym. Although there's lots of stuff on the web speculating about who those people actually were. And the nice thing about it is it's very empathetic. It's not a sort of Hollywood Babylon expose, although it is about some pretty searing things, but it's done with a very light touch that seems to be very respectful of the people and acknowledging that they're making their way in the world in a sort of extraordinary circumstances in the best way they could. So it's taken me ages to finish it just because I've been reading little bits when I fancied it, but really good. So of the yard of random books, I'd say that's a winner in terms of reading quality. David Niven, who was once in a film of The Prisoner of Zenda, which we read in part of a book club run by Michael K. Vaughan, Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. The third book in that club being The New Arabian Nights by Robert Louis Stevenson. So Robert Louis Stevenson, did he write Treasure Island? Yes, I think he did. I had that read to me when I was very small. I've read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that story, several times, but The New Arabian Nights, I did not know about. Great title. So, as it implies, it's a set of stories. Unlike the original Arabian Nights, these are set in mostly set in modern day. So the first big story, or sequence of stories rather, is called The Suicide Club, and starts off with a classic Victorian fictional setup of a couple of guys who like to roam the city, having adventures, experiencing strange things. So the newness of this new Arabian Nights is really modern urban life, and this idea that there's crime, there's mystery, there's miraculous, strange things that might be around any corner. So, Suicide Club, series of linked stories, like I said, and it's kind of cool. You sort of read a story, a new story starts, and how does this fit in with the previous one? And then it all becomes clear that it's all fitting together. So this is about a sinister organisation where um, they play this horrendous game where the participants at the end of the evening, one of them's got to kill one of the others, you know, so one is the suicidee, as it were, and the other has to become their murderer, and that organization becomes the kind of baddies. Our heroes, the two flaneurs, the two wandering characters, Prince Florizel of Bohemia. Bohemia, how bohemian is that? He's actually the Prince of Bohemia. Um, and his master of the horse, Colonel Geraldine. It's them versus the Suicide Club. Amazing. So that's great, and it sort of has a little bit of the Arabian Nights conceit with a supposed erudite Arabian who is narrating all of this. The next one, The Raja's Diamond, another story sequence. Won't say much about it, just that, like Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, and like the Blue Carbuncle Sherlock Holmes story, you've got a gem that is too valuable. It's so valuable it sends people crazy and drives them to do all sorts of immoral things. So that's another series of linked stories, really good. Um, then Stevenson seems to drop the Arabian Nights conceit, but you get the Pavilion on the Links. The Pavilion on the Links, not an actual golf course, but a sort of a dune-like landscape in remote Scotland, where a superb adventure takes place. One which I believe I've read that Arthur Conan Doyle thought was like the greatest short story ever. So that's good. And then you get a couple more. They sort of be drifting away. You get a couple of historical yarns as well. And yeah, all wraps up as, you know, what apparently bestseller. Again, another reason I bought this for very little money, even though it's from 1902. This pocket edition, one of many sort of like let's buy all of Stevenson kind of sets. So great, enjoyable part of Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. In fact, I liked it so much I bought the sequel. And there's a thank you for buying from. There's a little post-it note, not from Robert Louis Stevenson, but from the person I bought it from. Another one of these pocket editions, they're almost the same size as mass market paperbacks. So more New Arabian Nights, The Dynamiter. So looking forward to that as well. I've heard it's done in a similar way of linked stories. That's all I really know about it. But in the feeling in the mood for this kind of stories of urban life and its strange mysteries, and being in the throes of writing a dissertation about occult detectives, I also reread one of the Dyson stories by Arthur Machen. So there's lots of collections of Machen. This one collects 4 stories about a character called Dyson, 3 short stories and a novel, which is in itself a sort of set of episodes or short stories, apparently influenced by the New Arabian Nights. Okay, we'll get to that another time, because the one I read was The Inmost Light, which has a similar sort of set up in that Dyson, again, he likes to wander the city, experiencing it and seeing the connections. He's the psychogeographer of his time, um, although it's a kind of aristocratic psychogeography, I suppose. Um, Great stuff about the places, about how the suburbs were in those days. Apparently, you sort of you'd have a suburban enclave, and the houses would just stop, and then after that it'd be fields. Not quite like that anymore. But the inmost light, you get this what what is being stumbled across and explored is more in your kind of ultimate horror kind of beyond what humans can possibly understand, kind of disturbing stuff. So there's sort of evil beyond belief is is what's being explored here. So you can sort of see why H.P. Lovecraft was keen on Arthur Machen, because of this idea that just outside of reality there's the terror, there's these forces that can completely obliterate your mind and everything else. So yes, I enjoyed The Inmost Light. Um, Last thing I'll talk about, I think I mentioned, I mentioned these Tipbits Science Fiction Library publications I bought a bunch of last time. So these are 64 page, 1953 through to 55 novellas being published by the magazine Tipbits. So I've done two things. I've read Home is the Martian. I've also read, because I'd like to, if this is the Tipbits Science Fiction Library, then what is the sort of mothership from which they descend? So I've bought some contemporary issues of Tipbits, which was a general interest magazine. Apparently this was the height of its circulation. People were buying over 1 million copies of this every week. So pretty interesting. You got a pin-up on the cover, probably quite racy at the time. You get funny animals doing cute things, so it's like the Facebook of its day. You get articles like this: we'll all live like millionaires in the new atomic age. So this one was published 1954. So we're looking forward to fog and germ-free cities, push-button cookers, yeah, shilling in the slot cars, fresh for years food, goodbye to the common cold. So the atomic energy that's on the horizon is going to do all these fabulous things. We'll get houses that never need spring cleaning because they're always free from grime and dust. Rooms that stay the ideal temperature all year round, etc., etc. Buses and cars that move smoothly along the road with only the gentle purr of an electric motor, which would be great. And I love the idea that basically the cars will run off some kind of mains in the road. There will need to be no connecting arm or exposed wire. Not sure why not. A small meter in the car will show how much the owner owes for fuel, or perhaps we will have shilling in the slot meters for pay-as-you-go cars. So those presumably just about on their way now. Anyway, yes, you get articles like that. You get stuff about the television as well. There's lots of showbiz stuff, including a television column. But it's such early days of TV that TV was basically, there's one channel and it was live. And the idea of pre-recorded programs was like, is this really television if they've already filmed it? Surely television should be live. So it's kind of science fiction in its own right, really. There's some cartoons as well. I thought this strip was rather good. I can't find it now. Talk among yourselves. Here we go. Judy. Just amazing artwork there from an artist I've never come across before, Peter Meriton. So it's an adventure strip. Anyway, yes, that was Tipbits, and they're using that brand was the Science Fiction Library. The one I read, as by Philip Kent, it's actually Ken Bulmer, and it's great. It's a short, action-packed space opera with some twists. So there's an alien war going on. Um, there's a big space battle at the beginning that's very much like a naval battle. Lots of Ken Bulmer stuff. Whatever he's writing is a bit like Napoleonic naval stuff. So his Sword and Planet series, Dre Prescott, the hero is a Napoleonic sailor who is transported to another planet, for instance. He also wrote Fox, which is about a Napoleonic sailing dude. Anyway, yes, Home is the Martian. Battles twisted. The one thing I'd say is it probably needed a little bit more space. Some of the sort of, I don't mean more scenes in space, I mean more than 64 pages, because some of the kind of twists and double crosses and things don't seem to quite fit into the space of the story. But yes, this was very nice. So that's it. Some recent reads, some things I picked up. Back soon with something else. Bye.